What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name's Michael Roman, aka All Fires. Now, I am the first one to admit that it is crazy to be looking towards the Mutant Saga when we still have 2 Avengers films and a Secret Wars Avengers film at that between now and the Multiverse Saga's end. But man, we have a major update today coming from the most trusted of industry insider sources about what's to come for the future of the MCU and just who's overseeing the X-Men movie, and if true, probably means they're directing it as well. We're going to break down the latest update for what's going on with the RUSSOS past the Multiverse Saga's end and what looks like now to be a long-term future with the MCU. But first, if you could grab the subscribe button, guys, my analytics indicate that a lot of you have been subscribing recently, and I thank you for that. And if you haven't already, I would just kindly invite you to do so. It's the #1 thing you can do to support us here at the channel. It enters you for the giveaways, and I would sincerely appreciate it. Okay, guys, so this huge update about the RUSSOS and the Mutant Saga actually broke just about an hour ago from none other than Daniel Rickman. You guys can follow him over on Twitter at RPK News, and if you're not familiar with him or channels like mine that re-report on the MCU news cycle, this guy has been so accurate over the last 2 or 3 years that he has huge Hollywood trades like The Hollywood Reporter and Deadline, sometimes rerunning his scoops with credit. This is what he had to say, quote, "The RUSSOS are not finished with the MCU after Avengers Secret Wars." So they're basically sticking around after that. They've already signed a deal to oversee additional projects for the next saga, including the X-Men. Okay, so this is an absolute bombshell, and I'm going to explain why this is good for the MCU in just a second, but I'm sure if this is true that we're going to get the sort of size and scope of what this deal might look like in a future announcement, maybe next year at San Diego Comic-Con, where they'll say, hey, they're sticking around. Either way, this is going to be a boatload of time, money, and energy on both sides. Now, kind of crazy because the RUSSOS have their own production company in Agbo, but part of the reason that only half of the Marcus and McFeely duo and Stephen McFeely is writing Avengers 5 and Avengers 6 is because Marcus, the other half, is sticking around at Agbo and overseeing all the projects there. Now, this is good news for the MCU because what it means is if overseeing is different than directing all these projects, that there will be a constant bird's eye view, someone to quality control and steer the projects for the next saga, we can affectionately call it the Mutant Saga for now, from day one, and avoid the mess and quagmire that was created in Phase 4 and early Phase 5 when, let's admit, it's pretty clear in the rearview mirror that they had very little idea what they were trying to do or where they were going, and now it's just evident by the fact that we don't have Kang anymore. They've actually changed it into Doomsday. They can avoid that mess by having the RUSSOS not directing, not writing, but at least overseeing every project as they lead to the next Avengers movies in Avengers 7 and Avengers 8, which we just did a huge update on days ago. We're hearing from industry insiders that that might be an Avengers vs. X-Men movie. Now, of course, I know this is going to be misreported on a lot of places, especially social media, where they'll say immediately that the RUSSOS are directing the X-Men movie. And I think there's actually a good chance of that. I mean, look, if you're the RUSSOS and you're back at Marvel Studios and you're doing the next 2 Avengers films and you have a shot to be the ones directing it, I mean, why not? There's also a chance, though, that overseeing simply means what I just said. They'll basically be the creatives behind it, and then they'll eventually direct the next 2 Avengers movies, so maybe there's a chance somebody else takes it. Remember, their writing crew and Marcus and McFeely are something that they've stuck by for all of their Avengers and all of their MCU stuff, but now it's going to be Michael Leslie, the guy who wrote the last Hunger Games movie, who's penning the script for the upcoming X-Men reboot. So unless they're going to break that streak and pair with some new writers on the project, it could just be that them overseeing it from a production standpoint, but really an overall saga standpoint, means 2 things. Number 1, you get the guys who are known commodity, who have done this before, in charge of what's going to be some of the most exciting IP and some of the most exciting stories we've seen yet. But number 2, you get a continuity there that we didn't have in Phase 4 and Phase 5 because the same people at the top are steering the whole thing. You sort of really saw how there wasn't one clear vision for what the Multiverse Saga was going to be so early on. It's just so evident by their lack of continuity with the lingo and the fact that they kept wrapping up the next project that you thought would break it all open with basically very little consequence. We have, side note, a crazy video coming on Ant-Man and the Wasp because I think there was a huge implication there in sort of the ending of the movie that people might have missed. It's nuts, and it's not really dependent on Kang. We'll talk about that in a separate video. So there have been obviously some attempts to try to tie this together, like say the post-credit scene for the Marvels where they introduced a new X-Men in a timeline that is still unyet titled. There's stuff going on, but it hasn't had that singular voice, and so ultimately, if the RUSSOS can absolutely stick the landing for Secret Wars, it's a good thing that they're sticking around. But what I just said is a huge caveat, because if they can't come together and ultimately deliver on Avengers 5 and Avengers 6, which, by the way, I feel like they've earned the benefit of the doubt. I am not saying they're not going to. I'm just saying if that doesn't come off the way that they're hoping, then I don't know if it's as exciting or will have sort of the same sort of gravitas if you have them sticking around for the Mutant Saga, if, say, the next two Avengers movies don't come off the way they're hoping. And man, of course, they're tied to this really bold decision to bring Robert Downey Jr. back as their main antagonist in Doctor Doom. It'll be a lot different with the Mutant Saga, A, because they'll be there from day one, so they won't have to sort of tie together other people's stories and chess pieces. They can move them themselves. But B, they'll be free to experience brand new characters and write and create for them in a way that this is completely different. This is taking 20 years of canon, very, very known commodities and characters, and having to sort of craft the story in the confines of everything that's happened, where everything is now, and how these characters are already established in their arcs for, say, Doctor Strange or Thor, or even Star-Lord, for instance, who's been through his entire own trilogy. Thor's had 4 movies, and the only saving grace here is that A, the Russos have done it before, and they've done it before with these characters. You're not bringing in a totally new lineup. They wrote and dealt with Thor and Star-Lord during the Infinity Saga and during Avengers Endgame. Well, okay, mostly Infinity Saga, less during Endgame, but you guys get the point. These characters are not new. These arcs are not new. These are the two guys who were directing a main part of that. So there's definitely an easier job for them than if it were anybody else. But in the X-Men saga, the Mutant Saga, as we've been calling it, it might be even easier because they're again going to be in control from day one. That's why I think ultimately this is great news. But you guys let me know all your thoughts down below. What is your reaction to the Russos sticking around in the MCU for the Mutant Saga? I am all ears as always. And if you don't like them to direct the X-Men, who you got? Quickly, let's get into the giveaway stuff before I let you go. Alright, we're giving away a ton of PlayStation 5s this year at the channel, one for every Marvel drop, and there are like 6 TV shows and 3 movies to come, which means basically every month for the next 10 months. If you want to be entered to win or for any of the other future giveaways here at the channel, all the same rules will always apply. Hit the subscribe button because you need to be a subscriber, then leave a comment down below. Because it's truly random, the more videos you comment on, the better chance you have of winning. All winners will always be announced at the end of videos in the same segment here, live with my voice in the winning comment shown on screen when there is one. The best way to keep up with the content has always been to hit the notification bell with all notifications turned on, and as always, if you like today's video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button. My name's Michael Roman. You can find me in a couple of places, Instagram and Twitter at I'mFires. You can also find me on all platforms with original music under the name AllFires. And while I sincerely appreciate you checking my music out, thanks for checking this channel out. Stick around, guys. We'll be posting again real soon.